Dear learners, we shall be continuing our discussion on the implied conditions and warranties. In this final and part 4 lecture, we shall be taking up the remaining implied conditions. Then we shall be taking up the implied warranties, on which there are only two implied warranties, so there will be a very brief discussion, and whether the conditions and warranties they can be negatived through an agreement between the parties. So the implied condition that we are going to take up in this lecture is sale by sample, which is provided under section 17. So while it does provide an implied condition in a sale by sample, but it does not define what is a sample. So generally speaking, a sample is a representative of a larger quantity. So for example, if you go to a well-known ice cream parlor, Naturals ice cream, so they give you that option of first tasting it before you place an order. So the thing with the sample is that whatever is taken as a sample, it should correspond with the remaining bulk in terms of its quality. Similarly, sample is used also in various research techniques and even exit polls. So exit poll, which is shown as a poll of the entire nation or a state, is conducted on a few thousand individuals. But as a sample, it can be translated as being representative of the entire population. So sample is essentially a representative of a larger body or a larger quantity, and the intention of having a sample is to give to the naked eye a description that may be written in words, which may be through by word of mouth or written words. So its intention is to give a representation to a particular product through a naked eye, which may otherwise be reduced in words, either in written or oral. So section 17 provides that a contract of sale is a contract for sale by sample where there is a term in the contract, express or implied, to that effect. Secondly, in case of a contract for sale by sample, there is an implied condition. Firstly, that the bulk shall correspond with the sample in quality, that the buyer shall have a reasonable opportunity of comparing the bulk with the sample, and that the goods shall be free from any defect rendering them unmerchantable, which would not be apparent on a reasonable examination of the sample. So to break down the language of section 17 clause 2, the first requirement of a sample is that the bulk shall correspond with the sample in quality. The second, the buyer shall have an opportunity of comparing the bulk with the sample. And third, the good shall be of merchantable quality. So most of these things we have already discussed. For example, we've had an extensive discussion on what is merchantability. We also took a look at what is a sale by sample when looking at the implied condition of description with sample. So therefore, this topic does not require much elaborate discussion. Now we shall be moving on to implied warranties, but before that, let us differentiate it from express warranties. So an express warranties are those which are expressly agreed upon by the buyer and seller at the time of making the contract. So when a provision is included in the contract itself related to a particular stipulation, maybe of quality, price, time of payment of delivery, payment of price, it can be many things. But when it is a part of the contract, it is known as an express warranty. We have discussed many examples of warranties in our introductory lecture, on conditions and warranties, but just to recollect our memory. So we have this example where X contracts with Y, who is a seller, to buy a television set to gift it to his friend Z on Z's birthday, that is February 20th. The TV set is to be delivered on February 19th and payment has to be made by February 24th. Now, as we read about in section 11, generally stipulations as to time of payment is a warranty. So here February 24th, which is the time of payment of the goods, this is a warranty, because if instead of paying on February 24th, the buyer pays on a later date, the contract cannot be repudiated. On the other hand, implied warranties are those which the law incorporates into the contract of sale. They are not expressly provided, but they are presumed by the law. They operate, or as a matter of default rule, they apply to all contracts of sale of goods. They are excluded only when there is a specific provision in the agreement that implied conditions and warranties shall not operate. So now we shall be looking at the various kinds of implied warranties. So there are two implied warranties, much less than the number of implied conditions. The first is the quiet possession of the goods, which is provided under section 14 clause B. If there is any interruption in the possession of the goods by the buyer, then he can sue the seller or any third party for damages. The second is that the goods shall be free from any encumbrance. This is provided under section 14 clause C. So encumbrance means that there should not be any third party rights over the goods which have been bought by the buyer. Now let us further clarify what is an encumbrance with the help of an example. Supposing there is a person A who sold his laptop to B for rupees 20,000. A's laptop was already placed as a security against a loan of rupees 3,000 which A had taken from C, who is a third party. Now B as a buyer was not aware of this loan which A had taken from C. So therefore, when confronted by the third party, B had to pay the loan amount to C. Now here B is entitled to claim this amount from A because A has committed a breach of implied warranty that the goods shall be free from any encumbrance. So here the encumbrance was that the laptop was pledged as a security against a loan which the seller had taken from a third party. So the goods, they shall be free from any encumbrance or third party rights, otherwise it would be considered as a breach of warranty. Now we will take a look at the law related to variation of implied terms, which may be a condition or a warranty. There are two provisions which are relevant for this discussion. First is section 62, which reads as, where any right, duty or liability would arise under a contract of sale by implication of law, it may be negatived or varied by express agreement or by the course of dealing between the parties or by usage, if the usage is such as to bind both parties to the agreement. So the general rule is that implied conditions and warranties, they apply to all contracts. However, any right, duty or liability arising in any of the implied terms, they can be negatived by the parties. The next provision is section 16 clause 4, which reads as, an express warranty or condition does not negative a warranty or condition implied by this act unless inconsistent therewith. So here it is essentially express condition or warranty versus implied condition of warranty. So what section 16 clause 4 provides is that if there is certain express condition on warranty which is provided under the contract, and there are obviously implied conditions and warranties which are provided under the Sale of Goods Act. If there is no contradiction between the two, then both will operate. So express conditions and warranties would be in addition to those that are implied by the law. However, if there is any contradiction or conflict between any express condition or warranty on one hand and implied condition or warranty on the other hand, then it is the express condition or warranty which is going to have an overriding effect, or it is going to prevail over an implied condition or warranty. So with this, we come towards the closure of our discussion on fundamental terms, that is conditions and warranties. During the course of the lectures, we have discussed what is an implied condition and warranty, what is an express condition and warranty. Then in great detail, we have discussed each of the implied conditions as to title, description, description by sample, quality and fitness, mercantile quality, usage of trade, and sale by sample. Then two implied warranties we have discussed, quiet possession and free from encumbrance. So this is a summary of our entire discussion on implied conditions and warranties. With this, we end our discussion on fundamental terms, that is conditions and warranties. We will be taking up some other aspects of sale of goods in the subsequent lectures. Thank you very much.